Well, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here, man. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Go ahead and introduce yourself. What's your claim to fame around here? And, how long have you been around Dayton and stuff like that?
Yeah, so my name's Kirby Garrison. I am one of the owners with my father of Monkey Town Brewing Company downtown. We opened back in 2015. Even though our logo says 2014, because that's when we were incorporated. But again, talking about getting behind schedule, we were a little behind schedule. But my dad's side of the family is from Dayton, so I was born in Chattanooga, and grew up there for about the first 6 years of my life. Then we lived in Cleveland for a little bit, and then we moved to Dayton, and we lived there for probably about 7 years before we moved up to New York. So I've always been around Dayton. My grandmother still lives here. I lived with her for the first 7 years of Monkey Town, just to save money, so I didn't have to take really a paycheck, so we could just reinvest it. So I've always had familial ties to Dayton.
Isn't there a Garrison that's a judge or something like that?
Shannon Garrison,
and
yeah.
Do you have any relation?
I want to say we're related through marriage, not by blood.
Okay, gotcha.
So my dad has told us our affiliations, so
and you've forgotten.
and forgotten. Yes, he does. We don't go to as many family reunions as we used to, so I don't know him too well. But yes, Shannon Garrison is related to us.
What year did y'all move to New York?
So we moved in 2004. Because my dad helped a friend who was also from Dayton, Terry Harwood, open up a restaurant out in the Hamptons on an island called Shelter Island. That's kind of how I got my feet wet in the restaurant industry. I was 14. So just, washing dishes, running food, bussing tables, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, cool.
And they went through their first summer. I think their GM had quit, and that's why he called my dad, who was selling insurance, hating his job. Just, he was a little overweight. He was losing his hair. He has high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So he was just a heart attack away from something happening. So he was overweight and stressed, so he decided to help start a restaurant. Exactly.
Is that?
Yep. It makes all the sense in the world, right? But yeah, I mean, it really was, just kind of he had a feeling about it, but we didn't all move up in the beginning. He was there for about 6 months. So I'm the oldest of 5 siblings. So my mom's a housemaker. She's a housewife. So. That was stressful. That was stressful to be alone with 5 kids. I was 14 and I was the oldest. So when he came back after 6 months, he'd lost all that weight, all that extra weight. His hair had started growing back.
Oh, wow.
He didn't have to take like blood pressure medicine and all that.
He's just like way more healthy.
Way more healthy. And he's like, I feel great. And I think that this is what we should do for our family. And so we were homeschooled, so it wasn't like a big
y'all were homeschooled
jump. We were all homeschooled up to that point. I was homeschooled from 2nd grade to 8th grade. So nice. We tried to talk about doing a brewery in New York, and whether it be the taxes, whether it be finding a property that we could afford. We did everything with our own money, with 0% interest credit cards. My dad's mom, my grandmother, who lives down here, she gave us a little seed money to get it going. But we really, like Johnny Cash, I built it one piece at a time. Except it didn't cost a dime; it cost a little more than that. That's the only way we were going to be able to make it work. But I have always dealt with ADHD and changing my mind. I've never been able to stick with something for more than a couple of months. I get hyper fixated on it, learn as much as I can, and then just like the drop of a hat, I get bored. I get bored. And so brewing for me was the first thing that held my attention. And so after about a year, I did it while I was working. I worked through college and again, paid off all my loans because I was, what little loans I did have. I'd graduated, finally found something that I enjoyed doing. And so my grandfather, who's since passed, my grandmother's, my dad's mom's husband, had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And so it was getting increasingly difficult for her to take care of him. And so my dad was down here to help move him into an assisted living home. And so when he was down here, he was walking downtown and just noticed, it's like, man, I remember when that used to be this and when that used to be that. And it just didn't have any life to it. It was, either banks or lawyers' offices or, again, antique shops. And it's like there's no real reason for people to get off the highway and come visit other than, to see the museum.
Right.
Which even in its heyday, it was a room in a basement. It wasn't like a real banging museum for as famous a court case as it is. So my dad, came back and he said, all right, I know we've been talking about doing the brewery up here. How about we do it down in Tennessee? And at first I was like, no way, I'm not moving back down there. I'm moving into the city. I was going to move to Brooklyn with some friends and work in a brewery.
I imagine starting a brewery in Brooklyn would be so hard.
So difficult.
Like, so much competition, right?
So much competition, and just you have to deal with, like, if you think getting codes and things approved through local government is tough in Dayton, let alone Chattanooga, New York City, bananas, bonkers, and we just didn't have the money or the know-how to do that.
Yeah.
So it took some convincing from him, but that's why we eventually decided to come down. The only thing was, he wasn't ready to quit his job yet because he was making six figures, really only having to work 6 months out of the year because it was seasonal, but it's still expensive, And so he's like, I mean, on paper, it looks like I'm making a lot of money, but I'm getting taxed out the butt.
Yeah.
So he's like, I can't quit my job and move down here just yet. So it was just me for a little under 2 years. And that was
like starting it and everything.
Yeah. I was down here because I moved down. I moved down right after Thanksgiving.
And y'all started it with a Kickstarter, right?
Yeah, so it's the company's Fundable, and the only thing different about Fundable was even if you didn't hit your goal, you got to keep your money. Which Kickstarter, you have to meet the goal. I believe.
So the platform wasn't Kickstarter, but it was a crowdfunder
exactly
called Fundable.
Yep, called Fundable. And so we were shooting. Technically, we didn't hit our mark. We were shooting for $20,000.
Okay.
Which was kind of what I needed for the brewing equipment and all that, which I'll get into that later of just how far we've come. But we only raised about $17,000, so
pretty close.
It's very close, but still, yeah. So we got a little money. We got a little money, and people were really generous. But it was mainly people that we knew up in New York. It really wasn't.
Nice.
It really wasn't a lot of locals, because we just didn't have the network.
But that's good.
It was
out of town investment. Start something cool.
And so we opened up. We really kind of didn't know what we wanted it to be. It was really just, I think in my dad's eyes, it was just something for me to do. It was
funny.
like I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't want to be an English teacher. I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. So I think he looked at this as something that I can do and branch out on my own. And it just, it got worse before it got better, but it certainly turned into something that we hadn't planned, which is just, now we have 4 locations. And, we're just, people know our brand now. It's not just some small little local brewery or whatever. It's like, no, we go to Nashville and people know who we are. I mean, we're not huge, but it's a lot more than we initially anticipated. So yeah, those first year and a half was rough.
Talk about it a little bit. So you put it on this crowdfunding. You get a lot of support from out of towners. What were some of the perks? Is that how? I know Kickstarter, you give and you get some kind of perk back. Like, did you have cool perks? And
I'll be honest, not really. I mean, it was really people just being like, here, because again, they have more money. They have more money than God. That it's ridiculous. So they're like, what's $5,000? Like that's in my couch cushions. So that's really how we were able to make the money. But like we were gonna do like a private party or this or that if so and so gave this amount of money, but like 2 people did, and they lived in New York, so they're like,
weren't
I'm not
able to
coming
come.
to that. Exactly. So the people that did, like we did like T-shirts, hoodies, that type of stuff, custom. It says like founder, founding,
nice,
whatever.
Nice.
But
you should do a re-release of those.
That'd
be really cool.
Yeah, it would be cool. It would be cool. Yeah, but yeah. So
So you get money in hand. 17 grand.
17 grand, 0% interest credit cards. I had about.
This sounds risky.
Very risky. Very risky. It was risky business.
The 0% credit cards, I assume, is 0% for a year.
Yeah.
So there's a time.
And then
there's a watch.
And then
clicking down.
Then we balance transfer onto another.
Onto another credit card.
Yeah, we did that.
This is so janky. This is like financial DIY.
It really is, but that's just how broke we were trying to start a business. Like we started it for maybe $100,000, and that's nothing when you think of what it takes to start a business, especially a restaurant. So we really. But we also started it not expecting that we were going to get as big as we are. My brewing system initially just did, maybe 15 gallons at a time. My fermenters were refrigerators.
So what was the vision at that time?
Just to be a small little local spot. Again, have a way for me to make money. I don't think Dad really anticipated quitting his job as soon after, as we expected. He quit it after a year and a half. My sister was still a sophomore, so we had to take her out of the school up there and send her to Ray County. And so he really didn't want to do that because all of us got to graduate and all that with our class, and so we didn't want to do that to her. But I was like, Dad, I can't do this myself. We started it. I was 24, just a dumb 24, not a I got everything going 24.
Yeah.
I'm in over my head. I don't know what I'm doing. I need some help. And so he sold his house up there and he bought one down here. And actually he lived with my grandmother the whole family did for probably about 6 months.
Wow.
Which was a little rough.
While they looked for a house.
While they looked for a house. And we were able to get everybody down here. And so of the 5 of us, of my siblings, 3 other ones are involved. The only one that isn't still lives in New York.
Oh,
but
cool.
Yeah, my youngest brother helps with our accounting and our payroll. And he also is part owner of the pizza place that we have next door to Dayton, First Avenue Pizza Books and Treats. So he's involved. My mom makes all the gelatos, the cheesecakes, all those types of things. She runs the bookstore that's in the front, so she's involved. My younger sister helps with our Chattanooga location. And then the next oldest brother moved here from Buffalo, and he's helping us with Loudon. So it really is. Nice. It takes a village.
Big team.
So big team. No one has your back like family. In a lot of cases, not everyone's as fortunate to have a family like I am, but I couldn't imagine doing it with anybody else. So they're really the reason why it's been able to survive is because we all do bring something to the table.
What happened to make you realize you were in over your head? Like you've got the money, you start brewing a little bit of beer, you lease. Because you're in the same space that you've always had, right? That was your first lease.
Yep. That was
which is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
That's been that long term with so much growth. So you get your initial money with the credit cards and everything. You start brewing 5 gallons at a time or whatever.
Yep.
And which I assume literally 5-gallon glass carboy with water lock type stuff.
It was a little bigger than that.
Okay.
I was able to do about 15 gallons.
Oh, you said 15.
Yeah,
okay,
about 15. But it started at 5 when I was. Here's another thing. I only did maybe 15 batches of homebrew, if that, before
you started the restaurant.
Opening this. So
this is the most American thing I've ever heard.
It really is. It really is. Just by the skin of your teeth and a little bit of grit.
Yeah.
But it sucked doing it that way in the beginning, but looking back, it would have been even worse if I would have gotten a bigger system because I would have been even more in over my head. Right. So at least with that, if I screwed up something, it's 10, 15 gallons. I'll just, slap half off and blow through it, and then I'll be able to fix it and do it again. But no, what was really overwhelming was when you go from being an employee to having your own business, it's like going from babysitting to having your own kid. It's like, oh, I'm in charge of this thing all the time.
Right.
And if something, of course, if something happens while you're babysitting, that's one thing, but it's like, I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. If one of my employees messes up, ultimately that's my responsibility and my fault. And I wasn't used to that. I had no management experience. I was literally a waiter and a bartender, for since I was, again, 14. I did everything. So I knew it from an operational standpoint, like that, but running it was bonkers. So I was definitely in over my head there. I'm better at it now. I'm still, I don't do well with numbers, so it's a good thing. It's a good,
it's a good thing you got a team.
Yeah. My grandfather's our CPA, so he and my brother kind of handle that. So yeah, I do what I do. Everybody else does what they do, but yeah, I'll never forget the day that kind of changed my mentality. Because we never used to have canned beer like Bud Light, Coors Light, anything like that. I was a little pretentious and snubbed my nose up at those beers. It's like, no, this is a brewing company. And so I can't remember what day of the week it was, but we'd done, I don't know, maybe $300 in business, and we were open from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. So losing money, left and right, and that was just over and over again. But this night was particularly bad, and so this customer and his wife, they came in, and we were just talking about how the business is going, and I was kind of honest and said it's not going well. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you this. What you need to do is you need to realize that you're a business owner now, which means that you can't snub your nose up at anybody, because if no one's coming in, you can't do what you do, which is, what you love to do, which is brew. So I know you don't necessarily want to sell Bud Light and those types of things. I know you don't want to make these types of food items and this and that, but here's the reality, kid. What you're doing right now isn't working. So you got to know how far to bend. Like, what's your breaking point? And I was like, putting Bud Light on tap. I won't do that. He's like, that's fine. You don't have to put it on tap.
But what's a half step back from that?
Offer a canned version. And he's like, you don't even have to make it, like there's some places, some breweries where they actually do sell it, but they mark up the price like obnoxiously expensive. It's like, you might as well, like $10 for a bottle of Coors. And it's like, you might as well not have it. You know what I mean? I know what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
So he's like, you don't even have to make it super cheap. Just don't make it obnoxiously expensive. So it's like, just offer that and just try that out, because your main demographic are people like me, people in their 50s and 60s that, either work at TVA, have their own businesses, have a decent amount, they're making 70,000, 80,000 in the South, which is pretty decent. You're living well. He said, those are the people you're shooting for, not the people that are into these hazy IPAs and all of that, because those are young people. And guess what young people don't have? Money.
Yep.
They don't have money. And even if they do, they're not as financially responsible as people that are older. So he said, you need to kind of give me more reason, because I love coming here. He's like, but my friends don't, because you don't have what they like. So just try that. Start doing stuff. So we got liquor, we got wine. I ordered 5 cases of Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, and Mick Ultra. And in the first week, I sold all of them. And then upped it to 10. At one point, we were doing 20 cases of just Bud Light a week. And so now it's dwindled down, and not just Bud Light, others. I'm now going through maybe a case a week, because people have been moved to craft beer.
Isn't that interesting how that actually accomplished your end by making a compromise?
Exactly. And so it's like, if people aren't coming in the door, they're not going to be drinking your beer. So you're not going to have the opportunity.
They'll get their beer somewhere else where there's not an opportunity to level up their taste.
So what I did is when people would order something like that, a canned beer, I would give them the draft equivalent that was craft. And I wasn't making a lot of my own stuff, but I was at least, selling other people's beer. So they'd order it, and I'm like, here, try this. They're like, what's this? I'm like, just try it. If you like it, I'll tell you what it is. If not, this conversation never happened, and you can go back to drinking what you're drinking. Some of them didn't like it, but there were a lot of people, a surprising amount of people. They're like, this is actually pretty good. What is this? And then I tell them. So then the next time they come in, they're like, what was that? What was that beer you gave me last time? Oh, you want that one? Yeah, I'll take one of those.
Nice.
Fast forward a couple months. They're like, you know what I just had the other day? An IPA. And you know what? It wasn't that bad,
Nice.
And it's like, this is someone who'd never even sniffed craft beer before. And it's just, people that are just starting out in anything, you need a mentor, you need some tutelage.
Yeah.
And so, craft beer in that regard, it's no different. It's pretty daunting. It's the equivalent of going to a restaurant and you speak English and none of the menu is in English. You're like, right. I can't understand any of this, And so
a lot of the times people who are working in spaces that require, I don't know if I want to use the word taste, but it requires like discernment.
Sure.
the wrong way to go about accomplishing that is to try to convince people, like talk them into discernment, talk them into taste. Like you could sit down with someone and be like, this is why Bud Light is not as good as this other beer. You give them 10 reasons or whatever. It's not going to do anything.
Right.
It's not going to do anything. But if you invite them into an experience, if you place a better thing in front of them,
right,
and you invite them to try it, that's totally different, which is what you did.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's really smart. So you became kind of a hybrid. So you're brewing your beer, but also selling
big
box beer. I don't know how you would describe it, but something like that. But you're encouraging people to try different stuff, and that's morphed over time. Does it feel like a lot more people are drinking the beer you brew now?
Oh yeah. Well, now we have 20 taps. We started with 12, and then I was like, I need more variety. 12, in my opinion, wasn't enough. Because you have to give people a reason to come visit. Because that's another thing. It's already difficult enough to get the locals to sign on to something, especially like that. With being where we are, again, whether it's the South, North, wherever, small towns usually are a little more wary of bars and things like that. I'm not going to speak for everybody, but this one certainly was. In the beginning, people were like, I don't know how I feel about this.
Is that because of alcohol?
It's because of alcohol, and it's just people didn't know what a brewery could be, and they didn't know what alcohol could and also doesn't have to be. You can have a glass of wine with dinner. It doesn't mean that you're going to have 5 or 6 drive home and hit your wife. It doesn't mean that. And so I think once people saw, they're like, oh, kids can come in here. Oh, it's non-smoking. Oh, it's not just a biker bar, which, let's face it, bikers are some of our best customers if you get the right ones. Just like there can be some crappy other types of people, And so once people kind of realized that it was more of a safe space, you also had food options, which I think, and I don't know how much we want to talk about the brewing industry in general, but it's going through a kind of an identity crisis right now. And so a lot of, craft beer has changed. We're now upwards of close to 10,000 breweries in this country. There was a fraction of that when we first started, almost 10 years ago. There was less than 5,000. So it has exploded. But now a lot of people want a one-stop shop. They want to be able to not only have beer, but they also want to be able to have something to eat. And they also want to be able to bring their friends who don't particularly like craft beer. Maybe they like wine. Maybe they like cocktails. Maybe they like cider. So you really have to try to be everything to everybody. Whereas before, brewers didn't have a lot of competition. It was Sam Adams, Sierra Nevada, Lagunitas, Dogfish Head, some of the big ones. And so you had brand loyalty. If you grew up drinking Sam Adams Boston Lager, that's one of my favorites. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Sam Adams does great beer.
Oh,
they really do.
They're fantastic, and they've done a lot for the industry as a whole. But I think a lot of these smaller breweries that got in it's almost like businesses that opened during COVID.
Yes, like a restaurant opening during COVID.
It is, exactly, as opposed to right after. Like if we hadn't have already been open for however many years before COVID, 5 years before COVID hit, it would have been disastrous. But
that's just luck. That you were in a place where you could survive it.
Right place, right time. It's almost like getting into Bitcoin when it was $1. You know what I mean? It's like there's nothing different about today. It's just $36,000 now as opposed to $1. So you got in at the right time. So for us, we got in at a fantastic time. I mean, Tennessee as a whole, there were less than 100 breweries in all of Tennessee. And so now there's, 2-3 times that amount. So anyway, I said all that to say that that kind of the business has morphed and grown and almost taken on a life of its own. And so I think that a lot of people, when they start a business, they're like, I hear this a lot. I just want to do this. I only want to do this. I only want to offer this. Only want to be open on these days. I'm like, bro, the more onlys and the more stipulations you put on this business model, don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it, because you're going to go out of business. Because every day that you're not open is a day that you're not making money. You're here to make money. I know you may love doing what you do, but let's face it, if you're not making any money at it, it's a hobby.
Right.
And so then you can have a job and do your hobby in your free time. If you want to start your own business, you got to
be customer minded. You got to see what the market opportunity is, what people are willing to spend money on.
Exactly.
And adjust to that. Like
For sure.
like what you did.
Yeah.
That idea of how hard it is to start a restaurant and the pitfalls and stuff, brings me to one of the questions I had, which is, so I love Dayton. This is one of the reasons I have this podcast. I want to see it become kind of like the best version of itself.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk to other people who also love Dayton, I'm like, I mean, what is there to even complain about? We have everything you could possibly want. And the one thing that people consistently bring up is restaurants.
Yeah,
it's
Chick-fil-A.
Like, we need more. Yeah, we need a Chick-fil-A.
If we have a Chick-fil-A, we're making it.
Perfect.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. No, we need more good restaurants.
Yeah.
So if that is going to become the case, how does that become the case? Not to inspire competition, but for Dayton to have more good restaurants, like what needs to happen?
I also think, and again, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but just being in this industry for almost 20 years, and being a business owner for almost 10, I found that people that say they want another place to eat, especially in this area, they just want a new venue to eat what they already know they like eating. And so that's why our menu in Dayton really isn't crazy. It's some burgers, tacos, sandwiches, salads. It's nothing. There's no gastronomy. There's no going crazy with it. So I think that if people want more restaurants to come, they have to kind of ask the question, well, what type of restaurants do we want to come? Do you want a Chili's? Do you want an Applebee's? Or do you want something like Screen Door Cafe? Which they do, some pretty interesting food items and options.
And they seem to have reached a good amount of success.
Oh, for sure.
Do you have a good? Do you know them? Are y'all warm toward each other?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Cool. I know them. Just like most restaurants, it's kind of that. Hey, I need a box of straws. Do you have an extra box of straws? Or, shit, man,
I would not have guessed this.
We're out of printer paper. Or it's like, man, I would just use my last packet of Splenda, and I'm not getting any more until tomorrow.
Splenda.
Oh yeah, we do that all the time. Or
that's actually a lot more convivial. Is that the right word? Like, there's a lot more camaraderie there than I would necessarily guess. Because y'all are competition, but it doesn't feel like that. Maybe
I think I look at competition as the only reason to look at competition in the negative is if one person is doing better than you, and then you have to think, okay, why are they doing better? Are they offering the things that customers want while you're doing what you want to do? Are they open more? Are they better at marketing, branding, this and that? Or do they just offer a better product? That's where people think that, like, if another brewery were to come into town, the only way that I would really, really be nervous is if they made better beer than I do. Other than that, it's another reason for people to come. Look at Asheville. Asheville has 30 breweries. 30,
yeah.
It's insane.
It's crazy. You drive, they're everywhere.
Exactly. But it's such a small town. It is tiny, very tiny. And you would think that with all those breweries being stacked on top of each other, that everybody would just be fighting for that little piece of their pie. It's like, no, you're just going to get more people to go there because they're like, dude, we have so many options.
And now people come for a brewery and end up going to multiple breweries.
Exactly. And so I think that restaurants are a little bit different, but as long as we're all trying our hardest, I think that the only people that are going to benefit are not only ourselves and the customers and the local community, the town. They have a place, and this is why I think that we've done so well in Dayton, because we give locals a cool place to go. We also give them a place to go when they have family in from out of town around the holidays, graduation, this and that. They're like, hey, we don't have to go to Chattanooga. We can go there tomorrow. Let's go downtown to Dayton,
right.
Which before we opened up, no one was doing that. It was really just Jacob Myers. And then, of course, Carabelle's came in shortly after that. But it's also getting people from out of town, because now they're like, we actually have a reason to go up there. And, we can certainly talk about all the outdoor activities that people are coming here in droves for. I mean, people are driving from North Georgia, Chattanooga, for rock climbing.
Yep.
And, all this. So many people are coming here for that. Most of those people, they get hungry after that, and a lot of them like craft beer. So, that has been something that's really helped us stay in business.
Do you feel like you had similar to your vision for beer, which was only craft, like really raising people's taste? Did you feel like there was a similar vision with food that you had to kind of temper over time? Like, for example, y'all had a burger called the Popeye, which was like really good. I would eat it a lot. And then I came back a while later and like Popeye was off the menu and I got a burger and I was like, this is a little different.
Yeah.
Was that a tempering of that kind of similar to the beer?
Yeah, we really, the beer is where, the beer's really where I scratch that itch for creativity. Even though my dad and I have been in the restaurant business for a long time, I wouldn't classify myself as a foodie. I'll eat macaroni and cheese out of the box, and it's with cut up weenies in it. I'm not a gourmand by any stretch of the imagination, and neither is my dad. So even though we know what works and what doesn't work, we really just look at the bottom line. And it's like, is an item performing? Is it not performing? And that's another reason to have other locations in different areas because it's a different demographic. Like the location up in Loudoun, we don't grill or fry anything. It's all baked. So our wings, our sandwiches, our burgers, everything is baked. So it allows us to try new food items that would maybe be a little too risky here, but then they do well up there.
And so then you maybe try it down here.
Yeah, so we did that in Chattanooga. We did Thai chicken lettuce wraps up in Loudoun. Nothing crazy. I mean, a lettuce wrap's a lettuce wrap. People love it up there. It's our biggest seller. Bring it down to Chattanooga. It's our biggest seller down there. So we almost look at all the other locations as almost like a test kitchen for us to try things out. So whereas before we tried to get a little creative with the food menu, and again, if you have 150 people asking for just a good burger, you do a burger. You know, if you want fish and chips, you do fish and chips.
Did the Popeye not perform?
It wasn't a big seller.
Really?
It wasn't a big seller. It wasn't a big seller. Yeah, that was the one with it had cream spinach on it.
Cream spinach and pickled jalapenos.
Yep, pickled jalapenos. Yep.
So good.
Yeah, that's been off for a while. I don't know. I don't know why.
But while it was on, I probably ate like 20 of them.
well, remember the good times.
Yes, I will. I dream about them.
But yeah. So I guess to answer your question, it's the beers where I really want to do two things. I want to expand people's palates as much as I can and as much as possible without being pretentious. But then I also just want to give people something that they enjoy. If someone just loves our brown ale, I'm like, perfect. It's not going anywhere. They're like, I can't get just a good brown ale anywhere. I'm like, I will gladly do that. Yes. And then if someone's like, I want a cool new thing, I'm like, perfect. The PB&J Fluffernutter hard seltzer. There you go. So I can make as many people happy as possible, which I can't tell you how many breweries I go to and they're just dominated by one or two styles. Like you go, there's plenty in Nashville or wherever where they have 12 taps and 10 of them are IPAs, which I have this whatever. But I'm like, man.
But if you don't like IPA, it's like you're just at the wrong brewery.
Exactly.
Like, okay, well then never mind.
Exactly. And so then I look at businesses that are like, now if you're thriving, then you obviously know that that's what your demographic and your customers
and it's your niche
want
or whatever.
Exactly. But it always annoys me and irks me a little bit when people that own businesses complain about not doing well. I'm like, well, first off, you're only open 4 days a week. You're closed 3. Do you have another job? This is your job, So, your hours are wonky. You're only open 5 hours a day. You're literally open 20 hours a week. How the hell are you going to pay for everything? And so it's like, start with that, and it's so anybody that says those kinds of things, I'm like, man, you just gotta do more. I'm sorry. You gotta do more.
So, and that's maybe an answer to how do we get more good restaurants in Dayton?
Right.
Like, better hours. Like if you want, practically speaking, how do we get more good restaurants in Dayton? If you're going to start a new restaurant, offer better hours, like more hours, be open more days. What are some other ways that we can figure out how to get good restaurants in Dayton?
Well, I think one thing is having a good landlord makes all the difference in the world. And
has that been the case for you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Jenny, right? Yeah.
Jenny Nevins is she's our biggest fan, and we're her biggest fan. She is incredible. We couldn't have asked for a better landlord. We actually recently bought the building here in Dayton. which was
the main one that y'all are in.
Yeah, we own all of it. The First Avenue,
Nice.
we own that whole building.
Nice.
Which was
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's my proudest moment, is being able to say that we own this now.
Yeah.
But there's so many places that go out of business because their landlords are just they're not buying in to what you're selling. And I think that for Jenny bought into what we were selling, and she wanted us downtown, kind of like Loudon.
Yep.
They wanted us. They're like, what can I do? Because I hate seeing what the downtown is turning into. It's crumbling. It's since the highway got built, it's kind of been on life support for a little while, other than, people going to the courthouse or the bank or this or that or whatever. So I think that you need a good landlord who's going to work with you. In there, I know a couple places in Chattanooga that went out of business, and it was just because their landlord. They weren't locals. They just bought properties all across the country, so they weren't invested in the local community, wanting to push for things and say, we need more restaurants. They don't care.
The vision's not there. They don't care.
Vision's not there. They'd rather sit with an empty space for a year waiting for someone to give them what they're asking than give the business a little bit of a break and say, hey man, just, it's not going too well. I've been paying you, so I just need a little bit of help. So I think that's huge. But I guess it's just knowing what the local community wants. And I think that if you're going to try, you have to do one of two things. You either have to do what we did, which is create a community, which is craft beer. There was nothing here.
Yeah.
Or you go where one's already established. That's the easy route because there's already a pool of people that like what you're doing. But more often than not, you're going to get other people that have already started a business, and people know what to expect from that product. So they're going to look at you with even more scrutiny under a microscope because they're like, you need to give me a good reason why I'm going to stop going to this place so much. So they're actually going to be harsher on you because they have options. As opposed to a smaller town, people will give you that second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth try because they're like, well, it's either this or you have to drive all the way to Chattanooga or you have to drive to Athens. So I think that if someone were to come here, they'd have to ask that question, do I just want to open up a restaurant and kind of do what people are wanting me to do? Or do I go, do I go ham with it and try some cool, crazy kooky stuff?
Do you think Dayton's ready for something like, and I think of this because I have friends who are dying to have this kind of restaurant open up. Do you think Dayton is ready for a Thai restaurant?
I love Thai food.
Or is that just going to crash and burn?
I think that, it's almost like if you go somewhere like to an authentic Mexican restaurant, like, no, we don't have bean burritos and we don't have chimichangas. It's like, that's not even traditional. A lot of Tex-Mex is not traditional Mexican food, just like a lot of Chinese food and a lot of Asian restaurants here, it's Americanized. And so if they were to do it, I think that they would have to market themselves and brand themselves in a way that wouldn't intimidate people and make people feel like they're not cut out to eat that type of food. You know what I mean? Like, highfalutin, as my grandmother likes to call it.
Highfalutin.
Yeah, we highfalutin, just too big for your britches. So I think you'd have to come in with a little bit of humility and, again...
and small britches.
Right, exactly.
That could be a branding thing.
Humility to small business. But no, I think that what I wouldn't want to see is a Thai restaurant that a year in starts doing non-Thai food. I wouldn't want them to have chicken fingers on the burgers. Because now that's too much. That's me putting Bud Light on tap. It's like, no,
that's not. Just one too far.
One too far. And it's like, you have to know where your breaking points are before you open your business. Because it's very hard to change them. Like me, I knew that my dad had a lot on the line with trusting me with the business. So I'm like, I know I don't want to, but I trust him. I trust what people are saying, and I think that it will work out, whether I like it or not. And now I don't care. Like I still get to make what I want to make, and I like money. I like money. I like being able to have financial freedom. And so if that means that I have to sell those types of beers, it's no skin off my ass. So I think that for a business to come here, they kind of have to have an honest conversation with themselves and say, this this might not work, but you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, said the great Michael Scott.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Exactly.
But yeah.
What are the growth plans for Monkey Town? I know that you're talking about new locations, but do you have growth plans for the one here in Dayton? New products, interesting developments?
Yeah, we where we are in Dayton, we have a pretty big free parking lot across the street from us, and on the back end of that is this it's a little dilapidated metal siding building that we bought, and it was Dad's idea, and he's wanting to put in a distillery there as well as a cocktail bar. We're going to extend the roof, and he's wanting to put in a mezzanine, and we're wanting to put in like a jazz nightclub.
Ooh.
Have a a pretty decent sized stage, bring in comedians, cool music, and not rock me mama like a wagon wheel 7 different ways. We're not gonna. I don't want to hear Tennessee whiskey ever again in my entire life. That's on the jukebox nonstop at the brewery. So, but I guess to your point, we're willing to take that risk.
Yeah.
Because we think we can do it well. We think that there's a need and a want for this, but by owning the building, we're in control of our destiny.
You bought that building as well?
Yeah, we bought
congratulations.
That. Yeah, thank
again.
you. Thank you. Yeah. And now we're broke again.
So what's the...
we got to build it all back up. Exactly.
Yeah, it's like Bezos.
Yeah.
What is the first thing that you're going to distill? Do you know?
So what we're going to do initially, kind of to test things out, is we're going to work with a distillery down in Chattanooga. And so we're really going to have at first just a private label. Where they'll essentially manufacture it for us, and then we will package it and label it and brand it and sell it ourselves. And people do that with beer as well. They'll contract brew.
Yep.
So they're like, I don't have $10 million for this facility,
but I
to
want
do
it to
all
taste
this.
like this and be like this.
Exactly.
And basically commission it.
Yep. So you pay someone that does have that equipment to can it, distribute it, pack all that for you, and then they get a percentage. So we're going to start with that at first. But good gin, gin, vodka. And Gate 11 does it all. They have absinthe. They do. You can't call it tequila out of Mexico, but it's an agave spirit. Yeah. He does scotch. He does bourbon and rye and all that. So it's a pretty good way to start learning. So that will be what we'll do with our cocktails.
Are you interested in eventually doing that in-house?
Maybe. We will get some equipment at first, kind of for show. We don't want to where's the equipment? It's like when we first opened Monkey Town, where's your brewing system? It's in there. You mean that little thing that's the size of this table?
It's like,
right, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not a brewery, So we will have some cool pieces of equipment, and we went to a craft beer and beverage convention in Nashville earlier this year, and a lot of these brewing manufacturing companies are starting to do distilling equipment. So we saw really, really cool small footprint size systems that are pretty dope, that look really, really neat with the stacked columns and all that. So, but yeah, we'd probably start with some lighter stuff at first, because to do traditional whiskey, that takes time. It takes, a couple of years for aging. So we'll probably just stick with the simple stuff first. And then whatever we aren't able to make ourselves, we'll just get from him, and he'll package it. Because unfortunately, if you're a distillery, you can't sell other people's liquor. So
you have to actually choose. You
one
can't
or the
do
other.
both. Yeah.
One or the other.
So it has to be a hard pivot once that time comes.
Exactly. So for it, we can't have Jack Daniels, we can't have Tito's vodka, we can't have Beefeater gin, but we'll at least have our own, and we'll make some really, really cool cocktails, because we have a couple of employees that are really interested in mixology. And it's myself included. I love mixology, and so we'll do some cool things there. Just a chill spot, a chill spot. Dad's talked about, maybe a dress code kind of thing, So
I love this idea.
Yeah, really wants it like on, the weekend. Yeah. It'll be, you got to wear a jacket. Guys have to wear a jacket, kind of those like nothing swanky, but it's not going to, we want it. It's a different experience.
My wheels are starting to really turn. I was talking to several friends of mine who we talked about doing trips to Chattanooga to have this kind of experience.
Really?
And do whiskey tasting evening or something like that. So, yeah,
it's certainly
very interesting.
It is, and like you were saying, it's you don't know until you at least bring it out into the ethos if people are interested. It's just like when we were talking about coming down to Dayton, I didn't think that the town was going to be into it. The town didn't think they were going to be into it, but the more we did it, the more we're like, no, this just wait, just be patient, And so now they came around, and I think that you can attract way more flies with honey than you can with vinegar. And so I think if we do it in a certain way, again, we don't have to make a lot. We can even break even as long as we're paying all of our bills. It's just bringing more people downtown. It's brand exposure because we're right across the street, and so that's how this is going to work. If this was our only gig, it might not work.
Yeah.
So that's that's another thing. If you don't have a pot to piss in, and you're scraping by paycheck to paycheck, but you just hate your job and you want to start your own business.
That's not the time to start.
Exactly. It's not. I'm like, sorry, gonna have to grit it out a little bit longer.
Yeah.
It can work, but it's just way more risky. So, but yeah, that's probably the biggest thing that we have going on right now.
And do y'all have plans? I remember you mentioning, I don't know if it's public information, but mentioning some plans that y'all maybe had for that corner building.
Yeah. So we still we pay rent there. We've talked about
This is real quick. This is the brick building on Market.
Yeah.
This is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yep.
Market and First. It used to have oh man, it's had several.
Well, it was
the last thing it had was the Puerto Rican,
the Mexican place.
Oh, was it Mexican?
Yeah, I think so. It was Mexican, maybe Puerto
something
Rican,
like that.
Yeah, Latin
and then
inspired.
Before that, it was
Sarah Gatlin's place. The not screen door cafe. It was, God, I can't remember the name of her, but I know her, and I know her husband.
We ate there so many times. It was actually one of our favorite restaurants while I was around. It was really good.
Yeah,
and then before that, it was the French place.
Yep, it was. It was that, and then before that, that's where the original Jacob Myers was.
Exactly. Yep. So the original Jacob Myers sandwich shop is what we're talking about. And what are your plans for? You thinking about using that for something?
So, at the pizza place, my brother makes all of our dough. Now, at first, we would get it. It was high quality dough, but it's expensive. They're like, all right, you don't have to put in the man hours of making it, but you're going to pay us for those man hours. So usually those types of products are more expensive. So my brother started making his own and has fallen in love with baking.
Oh, cool.
So he now does like deep dish pizzas, calzones, garlic knots. Everything is made from scratch. And now he's been getting into bread. And so we sell a lot of sandwiches and burgers between all of our locations to where if it was just one location, the juice ain't really worth the squeeze. But now we're like, this is a lot of money.
He's supplying all the bread goods for all of y'all's restaurants?
That's what we're wanting to do with that corner spot. Okay. So we're wanting to essentially put in all the equipment that we would need for us to do large-scale commercial baking so that we could essentially make all the bread ourselves. All the desserts, like all my mom's cheesecakes and things that she makes, to be able to have, instead of making one at a time and then, not able to replenish it for a couple days or whatever, to make a lot at a time, but also to maybe have it be like a grab and go, like sandwich shop.
So it would be public facing.
It would.
Yeah,
it would. And we're still kind of I love my dad to death, but he jumps around from idea to idea. So if you talk to him about something,
so
a couple months,
ADHD an inherited trait?
It is. ADHD, is an obsessive compulsive disorder. Thanks, pops. But yeah, so the distillery is mainly what we're focusing on now, and then the bakery,
and then maybe the bakery
potentially down the road.
There's a dumpster park there. Has been parked there for a while. Do you know what's going on?
So it's kind of he said, she said, but when the city redid that curb and the sidewalk, we don't know for sure, but there is a crack in the building from, I guess, disruption of the foundation. Either way. So Jenny Nevins, who owns the building, is in the process of trying to get that fixed. But yeah, that's what that dumpster is there for, is, I guess, demolition and things that they need to do to fix it up. So
that's kind of on pause anyway until that's done.
Exactly.
Right? So it makes sense to focus on the distillery.
Yep, the distillery, and I think that when you're trying to figure out what you should do first, do the one that is, it's Occam's razor. The simplest answer solution is usually the correct one. So for us, the distillery is probably the one that we could get in the quickest, the fastest, the easiest.
You see the road more clearly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's probably what we're going to do first. And then just really upkeep our other locations. Like we're doing some renovations in Chattanooga and things like that. So we have a bunch of side projects, but now we're like, all right, we're good on Monkey Towns for right now. So now let's look at making what we already have better, because there is something to be said about the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
Getting a little too big.
A little too big.
A little too big. It's hard to govern.
It gets back to our short shorts.
Exactly. It's an example we can use all day long. But that's kind of how I look at it. Where if you get too big and expand too much,
it could implode.
Exactly, especially if you don't have quality people watching over it. But yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
I want to wrap up with some questions about Dayton.
Sure.
Trying to get one of the goals for this podcast is to not necessarily get everybody on the same page as far as like agreeing about everything. That's impossible. But kind of hearing everyone's vision for Dayton and seeing where there's overlap and, continuity and harmony, I guess. The way I've decided to ask you this question is, what ways do you hope that Dayton stays the same?
Well, like most small towns, people like it because it's familiar, it's safe. There's a sense of community. Whereas if you're in a bigger city, you're kind of just one of the masses. So I think that that's always important for smaller towns. Smaller towns usually have a little bit more rich history, I think, or at least people talk about the history as opposed to bigger cities, which are always trying to forget the past. And it's all about new growth, build this, fix this. It's always very unfortunate when you drive through small towns and you see modern looking buildings next to old buildings, because it's almost like a scar. It's glaring. It's like, what was wrong with that? Who knows? Maybe there could be some structural issues where it had to get torn down. But sometimes they just want to get rid of the old and make way for the new. So I think as long as Dayton doesn't forget that, I think it'll be good. So I think that really just. I don't know. That's a good question. I guess I kind of answered it. I think that they should just not forget who they are, but also realize that if they want to continue to grow, you have to change with the times. And I know that can be uncomfortable.
Well, that's kind of the next question is in what ways should Dayton change in order to become the best version of itself? Like, how does it need to change?
I think becoming accepting of us and being a part of the alcohol manufacturing industry.
Do you still feel a lot of resistance with that?
No, but I think that we don't know what they're going to think about a distillery, and so I think that if you can get behind those kinds of things and get excited about those kinds of things, and even if you don't imbibe, you can still go in and listen to some jazz. You can still associate yourself with that location. You don't have to feel pressured that you have to drink or this or that. So I think just not being scared of it, I think is huge. And then I think that once people are like, man, if a brewery and a distillery can make it in downtown Dayton, what other things can make it? And so I think that we're almost that canary in the coal mine for seeing how accepting people are. And it's almost like, I'm going to wait and see how this turns out before I stick my neck out. I'm going to let them do it first. And then they're like, oh, they're actually doing pretty well. Okay. Like, for example, here in the last couple of years, there's been more businesses that have been using Monkey Town in the name. And so, at first, a lot of people, the name had a little bit of pushback because it has, for the longest time, it was a negative connotation for Monkey Town.
Monkey Town was a negative connotation?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah. It was, I think a lot of people, well, it's no different than when they put the statue of Clarence Darrow on the front lawn. People were up in arms about it. And it's like, you can't have the Civil War without the North and the South. You can't have the Scopes trial without William Jennings Bryan and Clarence Darrow. And so I think that people had built it up in their minds that Monkey Town is a
like pejorative.
You know, exactly. Yeah. Pejorative, kind of tongue in cheek. Kind
of like it's a clown show. Was it kind of used like that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, but also it's just, I think that was just a term that for the longest time was, instead of just being called Dayton or it being the Scopes trial, it was the Monkey trial. And so I think that when we kind of normalized that word, that name, people have been using it a little bit more. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that before there were no Monkey Town businesses, but now there are. And so I think people are like, that's actually a cool name. It has a cool history. What it now means is a positive thing, as opposed to before. Yeah, it was.
It's like owning
pejorative.
It.
Exactly. Yeah, own it. Flaunt it, baby. So show it off. It's a cool history. And so I think
it's one of our claims to fame. So might as well. Yeah,
it is. And I think that for the longest time, people, they're like, they had the reenactments and this and that, but they really only saw it from one side. That they didn't kind of step back and see it as, listen, it doesn't matter what side you're on. It was a point in history, and it's the trial of the century, it was called. So whether you're for creationism or against it, it was just a really big court case. So how about we look at it from that standpoint as opposed to muddling in the minutia? So in terms of what Dayton can do more of is, local leaders start approaching, do a little boots on the ground tactics in terms of trying to entice companies or businesses to come here, like they did with, like Loudoun did with us. We never would have gone to Loudoun, if they hadn't reached out. The same thing in Kingston when we opened up there. They reached out to us. We've had people ask us about South Pittsburgh and Athens and Pikeville, Crossville, all over. And so I think that they need to look at what other cities are doing, and not just in this area, but in other states, and see, we're about this size, they're about this size, they're doing really well, we're not doing really well. Let's see what the similarities are. And so, breweries are a huge driver of local business, especially in small towns. I can't remember, there's an article about it not too long ago that talked about breweries are a huge driver for business.
Is it because they bring the traffic in?
They do.
Yeah.
They bring the traffic in. Restaurants are a huge generator of tax dollars, huge generator of jobs. I mean, between all of our locations.
Are you taxed differently, or is it just that there's so many transactions?
There's so many transactions. Yeah. And especially when you look at the fact that we sell liquor. Liquor is an additional 15% tax on top of the 9.75.
Does it go to special fund or anything like that, or is it just general use for the city?
It's just general use for the city. The state gets their cut, and then the county
and that's
gets their cut.
liquor, not beer, or is it both?
Well, beer is taxed with just regular sales tax.
Okay.
But with liquor, it's 24.75%. So if you sell a Jack and Coke for $6, about $1.50 goes to the government. That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. So if the distillery is successful,
right,
the city of Dayton will be looking at a bump to the bottom line.
Exactly. And you also look at with liquor stores, when they finally approve liquor stores, it's like it's a no-brainer. People are going to drink. It's kind of like that. If we don't offer it, they won't do it. And that's such a naive way to go about life, especially when you're, a lawmaker, a policymaker. You have to look at, they're just going to go across to Hamilton County. They're going to go to that place that's
Riverside, the first one across the line, or
whatever. Exactly. And they're getting those taxes. Chattanooga's doing just fine. And here, Ray County, I don't know how we're doing now, but for a while there, we were one of the most impoverished counties in the state. And so you kind of have to look at it and say, it's whether we do it or don't do it, we're just missing out on money that we can use to improve schools. We can do it to, the new water treatment plant. I know they got a lot of grants for that, but you can reinvest it in your town. So even though yourself think you're taking a moral stance, really what you're doing is just kind of hurting the people that are residents here. Kind of they're missing out on,
because people are still drinking and the city's not getting the taxes for
exactly. And so I think just kind of normalizing some of those things that have been stigmatized for a very long time, and it's slowly turning and changing. Like, we get plenty of people that come to Monkey Town that eat a burger, get a sweet tea, and then don't drink.
Yeah.
They're sober 100%. And so we've been getting more of those people. They feel comfortable coming in. So I think that the leaders can, kind of look to see what other people are doing. Imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So if they want to do stuff, you have to say, okay, why aren't they coming? And maybe they're just not coming because they just don't think about it. Maybe, again, let's give them a reason. Let's see if we can incentivize it enough to get them to come. Yeah. So I think that that's what Dayton can do and most small towns can do. So,
well, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what Dayton becomes.
I am too.
I'm excited about the distillery. Can't wait to talk to you more about that. Honestly.
For sure.
And because I think that'll scratch an itch, certainly, that me and some of my friends have had, where we want a fancy place to go.
Right.
Kind of dress up, like you're saying, like actually kind of get a little more fancy.
Exactly.
Which Monkey Town, like your beer's great and everything, but it's like you said, it's a family friendly, casual.
It's very casual, very casual.
Which is great. But to be able to be like, I want to go out and spend a little extra money on like a really nice cocktail,
for sure,
and just feel a little bit more done up.
Yeah, exactly. To have it be more of a date night, a special occasion. I think that a huge thing that people are missing out on is a place to go just for a good date. Yeah. Boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. Another thing that I've noticed, at least I think that this will be something that's going to help bring more cool establishments, are people from out of state moving here. I think people that are retiring or just relocating, they sold their house in California. They have some scratch because they made out like bandits. And so now they're like, what I've always wanted to do? I've wanted to do this. We have the money. We're empty nesters. The kids, they're in college, graduated, whatever. We can work remotely, whatever. I think we're going to have, it might not be locals that will do it, but I think that it's people that have been in larger cities like us. If we'd never left Tennessee, we never would have started this. We never would have started Monkey Town.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Never.
So those people might be the ones to start kind of new ideas.
Exactly. Yeah. And they're like, and again, as long as they don't do it from a sense of and from a position of pompousness and kind of looking down on people. I think if they're like me with beer, it's like, hey, come try this out. You've never had good Thai food. Well, you're about to have some good Thai food. Yeah. And exactly. so I think that it might be those people, new date nights that are gonna potentially do some really cool things. So I hope so, at least.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of it.
Yeah.
I think Dayton in the next 10 years is going to become even better, as hard as that is for me to imagine, because I really do just like it so much here. I honestly do.
Yeah.
But I think that there's really cool things happening, and it just makes me excited.
Yeah, same here. I mean, it really is, there's no reason that Dayton can't have some cool things. And I think a lot of people, they look at what's happened to Atlanta in Nashville and even Chattanooga. I'm like, Dayton's never going to get never. And some people are like, we'll never say never. I'm like, never.
Watch me.
All right, bro.
Read my lips.
Yeah, exactly. Hold my beer. But I think that I think people's fear of change, and they kind of look at that, it's like you're kind of holding people back because you're going to be gone. Let's face it, most of the people that feel this way are older. There are some younger people, I guess, but most people, they're like, I like it the way that it is now. I don't want to change it. And so I think that again, in 10 years, the next generation is going to be coming up. But if there's no foundation here, guess where they're going to go? Elsewhere. Yeah. And so that's how towns disintegrate and crumble. Is because they don't think
There's nothing to keep them around.
Exactly, because what worked for people in the 50s, 60s, or whenever isn't necessarily working for the 21st century. It's different, and so you have to go about it differently. So as long as they're willing to do that, I think that Dayton is onward and upward. So
fantastic.
Cool beans.
Thanks for being
of course,
on here.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Cheers. That's a perfect way.
Yeah.